Is there a particular way of recovery that's practiced by most successful people? And what happens when you step off of that way or you leave that way? Today we explore the topic of the way of recovery on Finding Traction. Welcome aboard.
Guys ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, it's good to connect with everybody. We are now near the end of August, right at the end of August 2022, and me and my wife are squeezing the last week out of summer. It's beautiful weather up here, and we have one last week before school starts. My wife will go back to teaching elementary school. I'll continue coaching, but also go in and occasionally be back in the high schools, lion taming, middle school students and high school students. And so this is the last week. I hope you've had a good summer. Today I want to talk about this area of the way of recovery. And I also want to talk about the topic of slips or relapses in contrast to that way. So again, this is one of those summer podcasts where I have simply turned the computer on, and a lot of my inspiration again comes from my groups that I coach. And, I come out of those groups going, I got to do a podcast about this topic or what came up in our group. So this is no exception. This kind of came out of a group that I had last night and some thoughts I had around this idea of the way of recovery. So first of all, is there a way, is there something that people who are successful in recovery practice? I mean, there's also obviously lots of variations of how different people do recovery, especially in the area of porn recovery. But there's so many commonalities that you see in people who are successful. The very first one is one that I harped on last week, this whole idea around connection. If you have an embedded problem around porn in your life, you have come to realize that there's nothing that you can do. You can try. And I've got guys that said, I listened to podcasts for 2, 3, 4 years about porn recovery, but I was never able to break free. So just learning about recovery isn't going to give you enough willpower. But is there's something that's different? Well, it's what happens when guys go, you know what? I can't do this by myself. I can't do this on my own. And what happens is they finally begin to take seriously the idea of I need to connect with others. We can do what I can't. And now it does require a core level of honesty to do that. You got to be honest about your own situation. So that would be part of the way. You've also got to practice humility. I mean, who after all, wants to tell somebody else about the things in their life that they're not proud about? So honesty and humility are the very things that get you out of the starting block. And we've talked about that. That's actually the very first lesson in the Finding Traction course, talks about rigorous honesty and rigorous humility. But, you can't have honesty and humility by yourself. That's kind of like the sound of one hand clapping. Honesty and humility is really lived out in your relationships. And this idea, if you are going to be successful in, walking away from porn, walking towards a better life, you have got to take seriously this idea of connection. Now, the last podcast I did, I've really for the first time I came up with a rule, and I said, unless you are connecting with somebody every day for 30 days, 30 connections in 30 days, you're not going to get free. That's just your starting rule. That's just your starting thing to get going. If this has been a lifelong habit, then my rule was you need to, until you are regularly experiencing 30 days of freedom from porn in your life, you are going to make a commitment to call 30 people in 30 days or go to 30 meetings in 30 days. And that kind of separates out the men from the boys. That separates out people that are willing to walk the way and people that are just wanting to talk about the way. And, I actually had a great, shout out to one of the guys in my group, and he'll know who it is when he hears this. He said to me, he called me up and said, I'm just making a 12-step group, a 12-step call. And he actually told me about a rule that he had learned in his 12-step group. And it was like, if calling one person doesn't help you, call somebody else. And keep calling people until something breaks. And I think the rule was, you can't act out until you've called at least 5 people. So this would not be simply calling one person a day. This guy would say, I think I was his 4th call that day. Now, I would hope to think that it was such a powerful call that he didn't need to call a 5th guy, because chances are by the time you call 4 or 5 people, the urge to act out has probably dissipated, right? Now, there is a guy that is willing to walk the way of recovery. There's another AA saying that says half measures avail us little. And, half measures in recovery won't get you anywhere. Yeah, they're filled with good intentions, but you're not going to get very far down the road. So, the way of recovery includes radical honesty, radical humility. It includes connecting with other people. It also includes being serious around this whole idea of creating a safe environment for yourself. If you have ready access points where you can act out, you might, for the next 8 or 9 days, you might be fine. But on the 10th day, the stars are going to line up and your wife's away and you're tired and it's 11 o'clock at night and you should have gone to bed, but now that open access point comes back to haunt you. It's just too close. It was just sitting there waiting. It was like having a stick of dynamite in a really long fuse, and it just was burning the whole time. And eventually it goes off. So guys that are serious about walking the way of recovery are serious around the weak links in their life. They're not people that are prone to overconfidence. Porn has kicked the stuffing out of them and they've lost their overconfidence. They're not at a point where they're going, I can handle these open access points. They are truly aware of the fact that if there's open access points that they can readily access, it's only a matter of time. And so they're just really practical. The guys that are successful are just really practical about themselves and what they need to do to create a safe environment around them. That's another example. These are guys that are successful in walking the way of recovery. Guys that are successful are people that get help from people who are farther along from them. I had somebody this last week that was quite, oh my goodness, to pay you to be in a group and to pay, I'm not sure I can pay somebody to do this. And it's like, my experience was this. I mean, I've been in a lot of groups, but it wasn't until I was really willing to put a some money on the line and really willing to step my recovery up a notch and reach out to somebody who is further along in recovery that could offer me insights, offer me mentoring, that was when I began to truly turn a corner. Now, I don't know if it was the money thing. I don't know if the fact that I was simply paying for good coaching. I don't know what it was, but that's what enabled me to be successful in walking the way. I knew I couldn't simply do it on my own. But I also knew I couldn't do it just with a group of people who never were finding traction. I mean, I've been in groups, and one of the things I hear sometimes from guys is they say things, like I was in this group and all we do is get together every week and talk about, well, I acted out again. Well, I acted out again. And nobody was experiencing freedom. Nobody was experiencing taking steps forward. And so having a mentor, having a coach, having somebody who's actually been successful is a really helpful thing and a necessary thing in walking this path of recovery. So those are just a few things that come to mind. Now, let me, and there could be others. The reason why I raise this whole idea of a pathway is I want to give you a word picture that hopefully will also provide some encouragement for you when you don't perfectly walk this path of recovery. So last night in group, we were talking, and oftentimes in our group, again, people will share their story, share this week, and it's not uncommon where guys are going, you know what, this was a really good week. I felt good about my active commitments. I felt good about how the week went and how my recovery went. Other guys will go, man, this week was not a good week. This is what happened. And I found myself off the path. And so we were talking about this, and this idea of a word picture came to mind, and it's this. So in this word picture, you've got to go down to the bayou or Louisiana or Florida or something. And okay, so work with me here. So in this word picture, there is a pathway, a dike or a pathway that goes through a swamp. Okay, so I don't know. The path is 6 feet wide or something. It's a good solid path, but then it has fairly steep edges that go down, and then they go down into a swamp. And in that swamp, there is mud. There is all sorts of things that can entangle your feet. There is. Of course, because in this word picture we have to add some intensity to it. There's probably an alligator, a few alligators lurking around. Apparently, Burmese pythons have also been getting to take over the Everglades. So there's a combination of I don't know, not crocodiles, alligators and Burmese, pythons and all sorts of bad, nasty things, negative experiences that what happened to you when you step off the path and you go down into this murky, muddy, dangerous swamp. Okay, you're working with me here on this picture. So now what I want you to do is I want you to envision you walking this pathway. You started out on this path of recovery. Maybe at one level you probably had been in the swamp at some point, and somehow through the grace of God or the insistence of your wife or some internal sick and tired of being sick and tired, you got out of the swamp, and now miraculously you are on the path and you are beginning to walk on this path. As you begin to walk, the sun dries you off, some of the mud begins to leave you, and you're walking along this path. Now, let's say in this picture, something comes along, clickbait, an open device, and you find yourself making a bad decision, and you take a step off the path. Now, whether you want to call that a slip, whether you want to call that a relapse, you've taken a step off the path. And you know you've taken a step off the path. Now here, and this is what I say to guys. Okay, so you took a step off the path. Okay, then what's next? See, this is where it becomes really important. This process becomes really important, because what's really important is your next step. So when someone takes a step off the path and they come to group, or they're talking to one of their accountability partners and they said, I took a step off the path. Chances are when they called you or talked to you, the next step they took was a step back onto the path. The reason is because they're back in group, or they're telling you about it. Because once you take one step off the path, it's not the end of the world. Is it the best version of yourself? Absolutely not. Do you feel good about it? No. Is it something that violates your recovery? Yes. But if you take one step off the path, and then you take a second step off the path, you now have one foot in the swamp. And a third step off the path, now you've moved from a slip or a relapse event to a relapse state. And we all know what that's like, where now you spend a succession of days simply down the porn rabbit hole, simply completely indulging and going hog wild. And now, before you know it, and it doesn't take very long in that experience to go, now I'm back and my feet are stuck. And I've got some Burmese python wanting to wrap itself around my legs. So in this word picture, guys come to me and go, man, I shouldn't have done that. Or that was a dumb thing. Or, man, I stayed up. I always go to bed with my wife, but I end up staying up late. And then I ended up, spending way too long going through Netflix and YouTube. And then I was on social media, and man, this is just, whatever. Okay. Then what's your next step? We always say to guys, then do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. Take a step back onto the path and continue down the pathway. Honest, humble, connected, walking down the pathway of recovery. It's a little bit, one of the things we do with our guys is we really teach them to be honest, and we try to be really clear to say, what is relapse for you? Well, I kind of struggled a bit yesterday. No. Did you relapse? Did you end up looking at porn? Did you go, what? We try to get really specific with people around their boundaries. Just did this yesterday with a group where we're talking about what is red for you, what is out of bounds, so that when you come to group, then you're being really honest and say, I violated my out of bounds boundaries. Okay, so you did that. Well, then the next step is to step back into and back onto the path and continue down the road. It's one reason why sometimes I'm concerned about a couple things with the way guys talk about relapse or the way guys approach their recovery. Here's the first thing. We get really concerned with how many clean days we've had or our track record. Now I know why we do that. We do that because we want to we want to be able to mark. We all want to see progress, and I get that, and it's not a bad thing for that reason. Well, we want to see progress. I've been 30 days porn free, or I've been 90 days or a year porn free, and anniversaries and those kind of things. Okay, fair enough. But what I'm concerned about is what happens when we go, crap, I just broke my streak. Well, I guess it doesn't matter now. I took a step off the path. I've now lost my streak. Well, what does that dark part of our heart tell us then? Well, you've screwed up. You've already broken your streak. You might as well just keep walking. Keep walking down into the swamp. No. Turn around, step back onto the path, and continue on. So that's one of the ways sometimes that streaks or track records can do us a disservice. The other thing that sometimes, in our groups, we talk about red. Red is where you violate the boundaries you set for your recovery. And then sometimes guys are wrestling with that, go, well, I guess I went red. Okay, that's good to know and good to be honest with, but there's red in terms of an event, and there's red in terms of a whole stream of red activities. So even in that context, we're telling people, don't let an event, don't let an incident become an entire day. Don't let it become an entire state relapse. Because then what happens is you go, well, I'm not going to go to group this week because I feel bad about what happened. In other words, you're not willing to be humble and honest. And you go, so maybe I'll take this week off and then I'll just let her rip for a week or two. And then you go, I guess group's not really working for me anyways. I'm not connecting with anybody, another thing on the path. And before you know it, you are walking headlong back into the swamp. So if you hear anything today, I hope you hear this. There is a tried and true path, a pathway towards recovery that most guys recognize, and guys that are successful, they walk. And even if you have taken a step off that path, recognize it, reveal it to somebody else, and step back onto that path right away. The thing in our group was we say there's no shame for admitting, man, that wasn't, that's, you're not happy with it. There's no, but the bottom line is do the next right thing. Don't step off and keep stepping off the path. So I hope that gives you, I don't know, that picture was helpful for some of the guys that were confessing that the week hadn't gone well for them. And this idea of there being, simply not all was lost, their recovery wasn't completely blown, and they could quickly step back on and continue on with their recovery was a helpful concept to them. So here's to having the last bit of your summer. Hopefully you soak the best out of it, and we will continue on this journey and this path together. We'll see you next time.